Welcome to Just Asia, AHRC TV's weekly human rights program. I am Julia Roblondo. This week, Just Asia focuses on the changes in Sri Lanka's government and human rights situation since 2015. Through an exclusive interview with Dr. Clifford Pereira and Mr. Basil Fernando. Dr. Clifford Pereira, senior lecturer and medical legal specialist, head of the Department of Forensic Medicine at the University of Ruhuna, Sri Lanka, and Basil Fernando, Director for Policy and Program Development at the Asian Human Rights Commission, Hong Kong. Several issues are discussed in the interview, beginning with the enforced disappearances and overall state of the fear present in Sri Lanka that led to the significant changes in the country's 2015 presidential and parliamentary elections. What has happened after the elections and in terms of the protection of individual liberties and improving the country's much damaged justice administration institutions is also discussed. Dr. Pereira has also been involved in the Chamani mass grave investigation and discusses its progress within the overall framework of a lack of policy framework to improve the criminal justice system under the former Rajapaksa regime.
When we discuss about the recent political changes in Sri Lanka, we cannot forget what happened in 2015, specifically two major events which led to major electoral changes in Sri Lanka. One is the presidential election held in January and subsequently the parliamentary election. And people in Sri Lanka in both these elections decided very conclusively that there should be a major change in the electoral system of Sri Lanka. And why this change occurred in Sri Lanka? There are many theories, many arguments for that, and been given by various authors, various theorists. And one of the important factors which led to this change in 2015, especially in the presidential election held in January, was the fear the people had in the pre-2015 era, or the fear psychosis people had with regard to their lives or the normal livelihood in various parts of Sri Lanka. How it contributes to this electoral change in 2015, this fear psychosis pertaining to the people?
Yeah, that's a very important question, because you know, the one of the things that really created a tremendous psychological upset in Sri Lanka was the manner in which the defense ministry under Gotabaya Rajapaksa functioned after 2005. Now, intelligence services were used to do all kinds of surveillance on people. Threats were given over the telephones of threats of death and things like that. And it was not mere threats. You can see from the Pradeep Ekanaliyagoda case, yes, as well as the several other cases, that the people were abducted and they disappeared. And actually now the names of the people who have done the abduction has come to the surface, and they are being arrested. Now it's very clearly a job that was done by the government, but the government throughout its stay for several years after the
these so-called abductions.
This Pradeep Ekanaliyagoda's case, which happened during the election between Mahinda Rajapaksa and Sarath Fonseka, that election
in 2010.
Yeah, that you know it was all completely denied. So the state not only gets involved in murder and in the whole cover-up. This is only one example. All the cases of people who had to flee the country, the journalists and all these people, and the killing of the Sunday leader editor. then you get at a latter stage, even on for personal reasons, people being killed, like the case of the raga player Tajuddin. Now, that's the kind of a nightmare that the people were beginning to see, that their life was so insecure. Anytime, for any reason, anything can happen, and after that, the legal process, nothing will happen. So the immediate period was, there was that reinforcement of a fear. But of course, this is not the origin. Origin goes back to much earlier, from 1971, the way the JVP was suppressed. Now, according to the Criminal Justice Commission report, which had inquired into the JVP uprising. The number of people killed by the JVP is 63. The security police or the military. But in retaliation, the number of people killed from the JVP is over 10,000.
10,000.
You can see now all these people were arrested and thereafter. So we had this whole the idea that you can take people into custody and then you can kill them
and disappear them.
And the result is, of course, disappearance. That comes as a result. So it happened. It was again happened in 87 to 91 in the south, but throughout 80s and the 90s and early
part of the first decade of 21st century.
That's right. All these
in the north and east.
Yeah. So the life was not sure. That mentality, and the people wanted to be rid of that. That change has not fully taken place yet, although the new government is appointed. There is certain freedoms. Today, that if you can speak freely, you can the
express your feelings.
All these things are there is an improvement of space for freedom, but the legal system, the criminal justice system, which virtually collapsed due to this practices of disappearances, is the same. So there is no security for people. People are still afraid of all these systems. There is no faith in the law enforcement section. There is no faith in the justice sector. So that is the problem that they will have to resolve now, if the change is to be complete.
So in that situation, if you have to suggest any changes to be done to this system, criminal justice system, including the courts, the police, and the relevant other institutions, what are the most essential inclusions or the developments which should be there in these institutions in order to make sure that the people can live securely without any fear, like the period we had in the previous times? And so what are these changes which should essentially occur in these institutions?
It's very clear if you understand what a disappearance is, as compared to a normal law enforcement action. See, the basic principle of in a democracy is that the liberty of the subject, liberty of every individual should be protected. So for that there are laws. Say, for example, arrest should not be done illegally. Only
under certain conditions.
That is, either you have committed a crime, or there's an investigation, or you have been convicted. So that's a very, very important aspect, that for nothing else, that you can't just arrest people arbitrarily. Then the same about detention. You must keep people only to the extent that it is absolutely necessary, but and by a judicial decision.
Prescribed by the courts.
Courts. And the courts also must be careful about, giving that. You must give very sparingly. The normal rule is it should be bail. Then the third element is that any investigation can be conducted only under the supervision of the courts. Now in a disappearance, that is taken away.
None of these the above principles are followed.
There is no arrest. Instead, there is abduction. And then you can detain anywhere, anytime, in any way you like.
And it's not known to anybody.
It's not known, no record. The same is, investigation and the trial. The trial must be done by a judicial officer. Because only a judicial officer can decide whether so and so is guilty or what should the punishment. But here, the police officers, the military officers, the security officers are given the task of being the accuser, being the investigator, being the judge, being the executioner, and also the people who dispose of the bodies. Now, that's the very opposite of normal
democratic pathway.
Now, what we have to see is how to return, how to do away with all these aspects and return to a proper system of criminal justice. But that is where the real problem is. This system has been so weakened by these disappearances, arbitrary this thing,
arrests which are happening over the last 3-4 decades.
Is so weakened that it doesn't just revive because the government changed, it doesn't change.
So what you mean is, just because government has changed, these institutions are not going to be strengthened and these are going to be act again in the same democratic way that you expect.
That's right. So, and that is what we are experiencing. All kinds of things that are happening. In case after case which came the last so many months, if you go by month, you will find every month there is some scandalous case that exposes the whole thing. See, you get this Sevandis case, young small girl.
Yeah, Sevandis.
Sevandis case. Then you get the Ambilipitia case. And endless cases like this. And then the what happens that the police, even not only they do wrong things, but once they are exposed, if these people go and complain, then they make false charges. And that is what happened in Sevandi case. Two people who were arrested previously, and they were released, and now they went to file a fundamental rights action. Now then you say, okay, we are going to charge them for some false this thing. So life is so insecure. And the thing is, when that is insecure like that, the criminals make use of that situation. So you find throughout the country the women are complaining about rape, the children sexual abuse, because there is lawlessness
still continuing,
and because nothing has been done in order to to bring a stop to this. The things the government has not even put forward the policy line by which they say, okay, we are going to change the present system of policing to better that system by this time, by this kind of reforms. That's the word about police reform doesn't exist in the vocabulary of this new government. And the people, that is one of the things that people voted for, that they expected things to happen.
In that situation, the people are talking, or the media are talking about corruption these days very much, and why this corruption is not stopped, and who and why these people are involved in that, what type of the politicians were involved in this corruption. But do you think this is more important than investigating into the corruption?
That corruption, even if you find few people guilty, which will also not happen because in this legal system, it will take years. So when will these cases end? We never know. It's more likely that there will be many changes of governments before any change of so anything can happen to these cases. But even suppose by special trial you have a case in it will not make any much of a change, because the whole system that doesn't get corrected by just one case.
One case.
So for that there must be a separate policy, separate discussion, and the allocation of funds.
To improve these institutions.
Improve the institution. You need allocate for the police, for the Attorney General's department, which is in a severe chaos, and the judiciary, which also complains of lack of so many things. Including the actual power of actual judicial power. We have taken away the judicial review function
from the courts
in the way that it has been limited now. It's only before the bill is passed 1 or 2 years. The actual judicial reviews at any time, if a law is illegal, you go to court and say that, get it declared that it is illegal. You can't put limits to illegality. You can say if you don't declare this as illegal in 2 weeks, even if it is illegal, it will be legal. That's an absurd position. Now, and other thing is, the judiciary must be strengthened. The judiciary was weakened by the earlier governments. So we have to have the kind of reforms which will strengthen, resuscitate and for them to feel that we are same in power to the executive and the legislature. So that these changes, if these changes don't take place, and at least not that overnight you can do these things, but you must give the plan of doing that. You can give the policy for doing that. And unless the people see that, they will see that is nothing much has changed.
Yeah, especially with regard to good governance. Now, this government mainly the focus on this term, and if they don't talk about and if they don't work, as you said, for this structural changes under good governance, what they expect or what they meant by good governance will be nothing for the people. So, how long will it take to establish these changes, in your opinion?
No, it is, it doesn't take much time. If you say what we are talking is, basically this kind of system existed at the time of independence till in the 50s and the 60s. We were basically a free country. People did not live in this fear. Not that it was perfect. There was many things to improve. But basically there was a certain type of protection. But today even that has collapsed. So the timing is not the issue. How long does it take for a government to declare a policy? How long you think should take? Few months of proper discussion. With that you can come out with a policy and a plan. So it's a matter that can be done within months.
So they can really prioritize those issues.
Prioritize the issue and give the policy. Now then the people know, then people can start talking. This is how they are going to do that. And then, of course, allocation of funds. So once the process starts, it will have its own momentum. Because there is support for this from the people. So it's not a question of how long it takes to correct all these things. How long does it take to declare a policy of saying we are standing for reforms, and this is the steps that we are taking to achieve these reforms. This is the discussion that is going on. And this is what the proposals we are hoping to put for you, and that to tell the police, tell these various commissions, and then get the discussion started in the country. Of reforms. Change the whole discussion from these petty small things into this larger issue. And if you start that discussion, then virtually the former regime will never have the possibility of doing that. So if one of the intentions is to fight the possibility of the former regime coming back, for that also the basic legal structure should be created, because even if they come there, it is no use, because they cannot do the things that they did.
The way they
were able to do what they did because of the long period of collapse of the system. So we have to be more rational and be telling the people, this we are going to have a policy. This is the policy. This is how we are going to arrive at the policy. This is the discussions we are starting. We are starting with the discussion with the police. We are discussing with the Attorney General's Department. We are starting the discussion with the judiciary, and we are inviting you, the people, to engage in this discussion for a period of basic reforms in our judicial institutions.
Really, I mean, very recently, the working group of the United Nations who are working on these enforced disappearances came to Sri Lanka for an official visit of 10 days in November 2015. And these 3 eminent persons who went throughout the country and visited many institutions, what you mentioned, and finally submitted their observations to the United Nations. And in that observations, they also mentioned that it is very essential that government, the present government elected in 2015, as we said earlier, must come out with the policy and specific time frames and the necessary structural changes in detail in order to achieve the same stability what we had decades before. Otherwise, we are not into these changes, and the meaning of the good governance will be of no value to the public. So in line with those observations mentioned by the working group, how would you see that these recommendations would be enacted in line with the requirements in the country?
The first is that this specialist committee working group from the UN, they say that the victims of disappearances have no faith at all in this judicial system. Actually, nobody in Sri Lanka has any faith in this system. So the first thing is to government to recognize that what that specialists have done, but every average man in Sri Lanka will
have the
say
same
that. So acknowledge that, and then to set in motion a process by which a discussion starts towards changes. Now, of course, there are other smaller things. For example, the government has promised that they will bring about a law to to outlaw disappearance, to declare it a crime.
Yes, it's
strange.
Still not a crime according to our criminal
That's
law.
Right. So there is only 2 months before the UN next discussions on this.
In June 2016. Yeah.
So they said that they will do that before that. But up to now, we have not even seen a draft of a bill.
Any signs of?
So this has to be expedited, and that will at least provide a legal basis for judges, police, and others to act in order to prevent disappearances.
Enforced disappearances.
And that's very important. Disappearances is what created a fear psychology in Sri Lanka
over the last many decades. So it's time set, and the opportunity is given to the Sri Lankan government, the present government elected last year, to come up with this policy and the required structural changes, especially in the criminal justice system, to achieve the real objectives meant by the good governance, the very theme they put forward to the public when they came into power.
That is all for this episode of Just Asia. For more on these and other issues, please visit www.humanrights.asia or www.alrc.asia/justasia. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.